Welcome back to the Grdina Classroom, a podcast to strengthen your faith, family, fitness, and finances. If this episode helps you at all, like it and share it. The ripple effect of transforming strong families starts with a simple share. Today, I want to start this episode just a little differently. This morning, around 7 a.m., I sat down and wrote something in my journal that I haven't been able to shake at all. It wasn't a to-do list. It wasn't a training log. It was a question. And honestly, I think it's the question underneath every other question that we ask ourselves. So today I want to sit with that question with you because I think a lot of you are living inside it too, whether you've named it yet or not. Have you ever actually woken up and wondered why? Not why did my alarm go off? Not why do I have to go to work today? I mean, the deeper version of that question. Why did you wake up at all? Why were you put on this earth, in this body, in this family, in this exact moment in history? Most of us never ask that question because we don't have time to. We wake up and before our feet even hit the floor, we're already 3 steps into the day's routine, checking the phone, check the calendar, what's due, what's late, what's on fire. But every single morning you open your eyes, it's not a guarantee, it's a gift. And I think one of the greatest tragedies of modern life is that we've built a world so loud, so fast, and so demanding that most people go their entire lives without ever stopping to ask why they're here. We just run. We run because the system tells us to run. And we assume that if we just keep running long enough, eventually we'll have peace. But I want to challenge that assumption today because I don't think the system was ever built to bring you peace. I think it was built to keep you actually running. Let's name it plainly, because I think most of us feel this pressure without ever putting language to it. We journey through our lives inside a Western society that revolves around really 3 things: your status, your wealth, and work. That's the operating system underneath almost everything we do. It's telling us constantly, quietly, relentlessly, work harder, acquire more, take on more loans, keep up with everyone around us, to stay entertained just enough to numb the exhaustion, and then repeat that cycle until we physically can't anymore. Think about how early this pattern gets instilled in us. We're still running off an industrial age schedule, bells ringing in our schools, telling children when to move from one room to the next, training us from age 5 to respond to a bell the same way a factory worker responds to a shift horn. Meanwhile, our parents and guardians are out there carrying a mortgage, a lease car, student loan debt, modeling for us, often without meaning to, that this is simply what an adult life looks like. You get the bells as a kid, you get the bills as an adult, and somewhere in between, nobody ever sits down with you and says, wait, is this actually what we are made for? I'm not saying work is bad. I'm not saying ambition is bad. Scripture is full of the dignity of labor. Genesis tells us we were made to work in the garden before sin even entered the picture. Work itself isn't the enemy, but there's a difference between work that flows out of purpose and work that exists only to feed a system that was never designed to satisfy you in the first place. And I think most of us, if we're honest, aren't sure which one we're doing most days. Here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. We're told, and rightfully so, that living in America, we have freedoms that most of the world does not have: freedom of religion, freedom of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are real, and they're not something to take lightly. Men and women gave their lives so we could have them. But I want to ask a really hard question. What is happiness, really, if we're always tired? What is happiness if we're full of anxiety, if we're white-knuckling our way through the week? And if the best we can hope for is counting down the days until we collect a Social Security check and hope there's enough sitting in that 401k to cover what's left in our lives. Think about how that story actually ends for a lot of people. You work 40 some years, you finally hit retirement age, and then you don't actually get to fully retire because you or your spouse can't afford the medical bills. The finish line actually keeps moving. The rest that you were promised at the end of the race turns out to be a mirage. And here's the painful part. Nobody sells you that version of the story at 22. Nobody hands you the brochure that says, here's the real math on this system. You might spend the best years of your body and mind serving a machine that owes you nothing when you're done. We just get handed the treadmill and told to start walking. I don't think this is a conspiracy. I don't think there's a room full of people plotting to exhaust you. I think it's simpler and sadder than that. It's just what happens when an entire culture builds its definition of a good life around accumulation instead of communion, around what you can acquire instead of who you were made to know. I want to talk about the dream for a second, the one almost all of us started with. You thought life was going to be amazing. You dreamed of a nice home, a white picket fence, a beautiful family, maybe a golden retriever named Sam sitting on your porch. That was the picture. That was the vision that got planted in a lot of us as kids, whether through movies, through our parents' hopes for us, or just through our own God given imagination for what a good life looks like. And then slowly, almost without noticing, that dream got traded piece by piece. We followed the script: school, college, debt from college. Then the good job was supposed to pay off the debt. Then the 401k was supposed to secure the future. And somewhere in that sequence, the dream didn't die all at once. It just quietly faded. The way a photograph left in the sun loses its color one day, you look at it and can barely make out what it used to be. I want to be really careful what I say, because I'm not telling you that school or a career or saving for retirement is wrong. You know, I don't preach that at all. They're not, but the wisdom and stewardship matter. We're going to talk about that in other episodes, but I'm saying this today. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us stopped asking whether the path we were on was actually leading toward the life we dreamed of. We just started trusting the system to get us there automatically. And systems don't dream. Systems don't love you. Systems don't care whether you have it together on that front porch with your dog, Sam. They just keep running, and they keep happily running right along until there's nothing left to give. So here's the question underneath all of this. If the system can actually deliver the peace, the rest, and the fulfillment in its promises, where do we actually find it? This is where I want to bring the scripture, because I don't think this episode means anything without it. In Psalm 127, 1 through 2, the author says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves." Sit with the word vain for a second. Solomon isn't saying labor itself is worthless. He's saying labor detached from God is worthless, no matter how early you rise or how late you stay up. You can build the house, guard the city, climb the ladder, hit the number, and still build in vain, because the thing you're actually building was never going to outlast you. That's the trap hiding underneath the whole system we've been talking about. It's not that people are lazy. It's the opposite. People are exhausting themselves building something that was never designed to hold eternal weight. And here's what I mean by that. The world hands you a scoreboard, your title, your net worth, your square footage, your follower count on social media, and posting in the pecking order. That's earthly status, and it's measured entirely in things that perish. Every single item on that list gets left behind the day you die. Not $1, not one tithe, not one title, not one square foot of the house will cross over. So when Solomon says the builders labor in vain, he's actually making a product observation. He's stating a fact where your labor is actually pointed. But there's a second kind of status scripture he keeps pointing us toward. And it's not measured the same way at all. It's not earthly status, it's heavenly status. The status of being a vessel God actually uses on this earth. That's a completely different scoreboard. It's not about how much you build, it's about who you built it for and who you let build through you. A vessel doesn't get credit for being impressive. A vessel gets used because it's available, emptied out, and willing to be filled with something bigger than itself. This is a clear distinction I want you to walk away with today. Action is not the enemy. Ambition is not the enemy. Neither work is not the enemy. In fact, when you labor is aimed at being a vessel for God, that same action becomes a righteous act. Something eternal gets built through it, even through your hands are doing very earthly, ordinary work. The exact same swing of the hammer, the exact same hour at the office, the exact same rep of the gym can either be labor in vain or labor that God builds for you. The difference isn't the activity. The difference is addressing it, who it's being sent to. And that's why Solomon doesn't end the verse by telling people to stop working. He ends it by pointing to rest as a gift from God to those he loves, not a wage you earn from the system. You don't hustle your way into that kind of rest. You receive it the same way a vessel received what's poured into it. Unless the Lord builds the house, you're just moving lumber around for a structure that's going to fall eventually anyway, whether that's your career, your bank account, or your reputation. So the system will never be able to give you what your soul is actually asking for because the system was only offering you earthly status, a version of yourself measured entirely in things that perish. Your soul was made for more than that. It was made to be filled, used, and sent by God, not to be the sole architect of a house that was never going to stand without him anyway. So, what do we do with this? I don't want to just leave you with a nice verse and a warm feeling. I want you to actually give you something this week to walk with. First, I want you to get honest about which house you're actually building, not in a vague spiritual sounding way. I mean, specifically, where has your labor been aimed at? The earthly status, the title, the number, the image, with God nowhere in the blueprint? Name it and write it down. The same way I wrote this journal entry towards this morning, name it as the first step toward inviting God back into the build. Second, I want to ask you a different question before you start your work each day. Not what am I building, but who am I building this for? And am I available to be used, or am I trying to be the builder myself? That single shift from the architect to the vessel changes the weight of everything you do that day. Third, remember that this doesn't mean walking away from responsibility or ambition. It means aiming both at a different target. You can still go to work tomorrow. You can still pay down the debt, still contribute to your 401k, and still pursue excellence in your career. But you do it as a vessel offering labor to God, not as a builder trying to construct your own significance out of things that will eventually perish. Here's what I want to leave you with. You woke up today. That in itself was not owed to you, it was given to you. And the fact that you're still asking why, still sensing something about the system's promises doesn't quite add up, isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that you were made for more than just a house built in vain. You were made to be a vessel God can use, and that status doesn't perish. It doesn't fade like a photograph in the sun. It's the one thing you'll still be holding on the other side of all of this. Stop laboring in vain. Let Him build the house. Stay faithful, stay focused, and keep moving forward. I love you. Miles Fidelis.